What does he have to do with this?
let anything. You know what I'm talking about. Let anything. Nah, I don't have to say it right now. Don't worry about it. I don't got to say it up here. Let anything happen, and I'm gonna show you and him that.
In shape, 145 in shape. You know what I mean? So this is different from a Crawford coming up to 168, but we know his walk around weight is probably 170, 180.
The fight that I couldn't believe, that was too insane and honestly just baffling to think would be a real fight in 2025 reminds you that combat sports are the craziest sports on the planet.
Chaos erupted at the press conference for the Gervonta Davis versus Jake Paul fight, transforming a routine promotional event into a heated confrontation. Davis lost his composure when questioned about choosing Paul over top-ranked contenders. Paul fired back, targeting Davis's personal controversies and mocking his past. The verbal jabs quickly spiraled, forcing moderators to step in as the crowd roared, turning the event into a tense prelude to their highly anticipated clash.
Box. And truly, when people run back this press conference, all the shit talk, all the fun, they're going to be like, wow, this kid really is doing something monumental in the sport, and he's actually an insane boxer. And I'm going to show that this guy who's been doing it his whole life has been doing it wrong his whole life.
What'd you say, Tank?
He said he gonna outbox me. Whoop-de-doo.
The one thing, when you have a fight of this magnitude, especially with Jake, because his appeal has been global. For you, Tank, do you think this is one of those fights where now all of a sudden you can show your boxing skills on a global scale to maybe people who weren't interested in boxing? All of a sudden they say, well, who is this guy?
Yeah, it's actually like, now that I'm looking at it now, it's just like, I don't know, probably.
From the very beginning, the atmosphere was anything but friendly. Jake Paul, towering at 6 feet 1 inch, stood over the much shorter Gervonta Davis, who measures just 5 feet 5 inches, a striking reminder of the size gap fueling the pre-fight buzz. Paul turned that difference into a weapon, boasting he'd use his height and reach to dominate and keep Davis out of range. Davis, unfazed and confident, reminded everyone he's built his legacy by dismantling bigger foes. The lightweight champion vowed that his blistering speed and timing would erase any physical disadvantage once the punches started flying inside the ring. A major flashpoint surrounding the fight is the stark size difference between the two men. Many analysts and media personalities have criticized the matchup, calling it unbalanced or even a circus act. Gervonta Davis, an undefeated lightweight champion, faces Jake Paul, a social media star turned boxer who naturally fights at much heavier weights. Officially labeled an exhibition rather than a sanctioned title bout, the event has fueled heated debate about its fairness, competitive integrity, and the fine line between spectacle and sport.
The fight. But yeah, that was that. This time, Jake Paul is to take on Tank Davis. Tank Davis, he was recently in the news for being arrested for a domestic violence incident involving one of his kids' mother. He was alleged to have slapped her about the place. The charges were later dropped, to be fair to him. But yeah, that was when he was last in the news. What is interesting is just a couple of months ago, Tank Davis was saying openly that he'd lost his passion for boxing and that he wanted time away from the sport. There was speculation that he might even retire, as he was experiencing extreme mental fatigue from boxing, depression, and there were mental health concerns over him. However, I guess the opportunity to earn a truck full of money fighting a completely worthless exhibition fight against Jake Paul was enough to make him change his mind about boxing. Funny that, isn't it? But you know what? I'm not even going to waste your time or mine critiquing this utter nonsense. Suffice to say that this so-called fight we're talking about is an exhibition, and it pits Jake Paul, who is a cruiserweight, by the way, weighs in excess of 200 pounds, and Tank Davis, who is, he was the WBA lightweight champion, who weighs in at about 135 pounds when he fights. So that's a disparity of some 65 pounds. In old money, that's about 4.5 stone. There's also a significant difference in height. Jake Paul is roughly, 6'1", 2. Gervonta Davis is 5'5" at best. So, there's a height disparity there of some 8 inches. And once again, this is Jake Paul showing total disrespect to boxing, in my opinion. Once again, continue to pimp out the sport for his own financial ends. And worse still, powers that be in boxing, allowing him to get away with it and facilitating this utter bullshit. And meanwhile, what's even worse about this is that meanwhile, the WBA lightweight title that Tank Davis should be defending against Lamont Roach in a rematch. I mean, they fought back.
Jake Paul has built his brand on theatrics and provocation, and the press conference played perfectly into that script. From clown antics to shoves and barbed remarks about legal troubles, every moment was engineered for virality. The scene felt more like a reality show meltdown than a boxing media event. Reporters later described the spectacle as pure noise and chaos, plenty of drama and attention, but little real substance beneath the manufactured outrage.
Seen that Jake will kind of bounce in between doing these entertainment fights and then, trying to push toward his goal of ingraining himself in the sport of boxing, and kind of does both of them. So it's kind of a weird place to be, because he wants the respect of the boxing fans and the boxing hierarchy and hardcore boxing people, but at the same time, he'll gain some of that and then lose some of it. It's like a seesaw of his fights. Like one fight, like, okay, that's a real fight, or that's a real fight. He'll go and he'll win the fight. Julio Cesar Chavez, real fighter, maybe past his prime, whatever, but Jake goes and wins that fight pretty easily, and then gets a lot of respect, gets a lot of the boxing hardcore love. And you have these talks about him fighting Anthony Joshua, and that was going to get even more respect. More people were like, oh, that's fucking crazy. What are you doing? Myself included. That seemed like a massive risk, but a lot of people were like, okay, fair play. Anthony Joshua, that's a real heavyweight. Jake wants to fight him. He's a psycho, but fair play. And then you announce this one, and it's like, well, that's the same thing people have been saying about Jake for years. So it's a weird spot to be in for him, for sure. But I talked about this not being the first choice, and I don't think it was, because Coppinger reports next that talks for Jake Paul to face Anthony Joshua collapsed over network issues. Now, we had all heard the talks, and they were pretty public, from Eddie Hearn, from Jake. Makisa Badarian, Jake's manager, was over in the UK on, I think, Sky Sports, talking about the fight and saying how it was a real possibility.
The Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis showdown has become one of the most polarizing events in boxing history, a collision of spectacle, criticism, and curiosity. Fans, analysts, and legends are all divided. Some see it as a money grab, others as a fascinating clash between old-school skill and new-age entertainment. Promoter Eddie Hearn argued that the fight blurs the boundary between sport and showbiz, warning that boxing risks losing its soul when it becomes more about clicks than competition. Critics call it a mismatch, even labeling it a mockery of the sport, an event where a 200-pound social media star takes on a 135-pound world champion. They question whether the contest truly represents the sweet science or just another viral stunt. Yet, amid the outrage, others defend Davis's decision. They see a champion taking control of his career, securing massive financial gain, and bringing millions of new eyes to boxing's global stage. After all, in a sport built on risk and reputation, both men are gambling everything: their pride, their image, and their legacy. Supporters of Jake Paul argue that his presence has revived mainstream attention for boxing. They point out how he's brought younger audiences back to the ring, something the sport desperately needed. His critics, however, insist that star power can't replace legitimacy, that true greatness is measured not in views but in the quality of opposition. Meanwhile, Gervonta Davis faces a unique dilemma. His credibility as a champion stands tall, yet stepping into an exhibition of this scale risks overshadowing his true achievements. Still, Davis has never been afraid of doubters. Every punch he's thrown has been a statement of defiance, a reminder that no matter the size of the man in front of him, the heart behind his gloves remains unmatched. In the end, this fight isn't just about two men trading blows, it's about the direction boxing itself is heading. Is it a sport, a show, or something in between? Only time will tell. But one thing's certain, when the bell rings, the world will be watching. If you love the sport, the drama, and the fight before the fight, make sure to like, subscribe, and share to keep the energy alive and the stories rolling.